The village of Hanulgioel was quiet, but it was not a peaceful quiet. It was the quiet of people holding their breath. Sumin felt it as she walked from her small woodcarver's hut to the central fire. She looked up, as she did every night, at the thin, shimmering scar across the black sky. The elders called it the veil. The children called it the weeping sky. Everyone knew it was the source of the curse. Sumin was a young woman with careful hands, used to finding the shape hidden inside a block of pine. Her face was often serious, but her eyes were kind. Since her little brother, Tae, had died after the last star curse 2 years ago, the kindness in her eyes was buried under a layer of hard resolve. She would not stand by and watch others suffer if she could do something. The air was cool. Around the large community fire, the entire village had gathered. Elder Minsu stood on the old speaking stone, his face lit by the flickering flames. He was a good man, but fear had worn deep lines into his skin. "The signs are clear," Minsu said, his voice rough. He pointed a bony finger toward the heavens. "The veil grows brighter. The weeping will begin within 3 nights. The star curse comes again." A low murmur of dread moved through the crowd. Sumin saw mothers pull children closer. She saw her friend Hyan, the herbalist, close her eyes in sorrow. Hyan's medicines could ease the fever's pain, but they could not stop the curse. Nothing could. "We know what it brings," Minsu continued. "The heat in the blood, the waking dreams, the slow silence that takes the mind before it takes the body. We will prepare the sick huts. We will pray." Then a voice cut through the fear. It was Jeong. He stepped forward from where he leaned against a tall pine. He was a hunter, strong and direct, with little patience for things he could not see or touch. "Prayer did not save my father. It did not save Sumin's brother. This curse is not a spirit. It is a thing. It comes from that." He jabbed his finger at the shimmering veil. "That is a broken thing in the sky, not an angry god." The elders gasped. Minsu's face tightened. "To speak that way invites its wrath, Jeong. We follow the old ways. They have kept us alive." "Barely," Jeong argued, his hands clenched. "We hide and we weep and we bury our people. There must be more to do than just wait to die." Minsu sighed, the anger leaving him, replaced by a heavy tiredness. "There is one other way, the oldest way. It is spoken of only in whispers, for it is a path of great sorrow." He looked over the faces of the villagers. One person, one brave soul, can go to the stone at the peak when the curse falls. They can stand at the place where the sky touch meets the earth. The old stories say the stone can draw the sickness into one body, so the village may be spared. The crowd was utterly silent now. The idea was terrible. A trade. One life for many. "It is a death sentence," Minsu said softly. "The person may not die at once, but the curse will take them fully. Their mind will be lost forever in the storm of the stars. It is a sacrifice beyond measure." Sumin did not feel her feet move. She did not make a conscious choice. She saw Tae's small, fevered face in her memory. She saw Hyan struggling to comfort 5 sick families at once. She saw Jeong's anger, which was really just pain he could not fix. The words were out of her mouth before the fear could catch them. "I will go." Everyone turned. Jeong's head snapped toward her, his eyes wide with shock. "Sumin, no." She walked to the front, facing Minsu. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her voice was steady. "I have the least to lose. My family is gone. My hands are good, but the village has other carvers. Let me do this. Let my life mean something more." Hyan rushed forward and grabbed her arm. "You cannot. This is madness. There is always hope while you live." Sumin placed her hand over Hyan's. "My hope is that you all live, that no other child dies like Tae did." She looked at Minsu. "I will take the curse." Minsu's old eyes glistened in the firelight. He looked at her with profound grief and deep respect. He gave a single, slow nod. "The courage of the young is the heart of the village. We will honor you, Sumin, now and forever." Jeong stormed away from the fire, his shape disappearing into the dark. He could not bear it. The next 2 days were a blur. The village treated Su-min with a quiet, awful reverence, like someone already gone. They brought her the best food, the warmest clothes for her journey. She gave most of it away. She spent her time finishing a small wooden bird for Hyen, a comfort for her friend to remember her by. On the morning of the 3rd day, the veil in the sky pulsed with a sickly light. The weeping had begun. Jeong was waiting by the path to the high mountains, a pack on his back, his face a storm. Minsu stood with him. Jeong will guide you to the stone at the peak, Minsu said. He knows the way. He will see you to the moment. The elder placed a hand on Su-min's head in a blessing, then turned away, shoulders shaking. Su-min adjusted her own pack. You do not have to do this, Jeong. Yes, he said, his voice tight. Ido. Someone has to bring back your body. He said it harshly, but the pain underneath was clear. He started walking up the steep path without looking back. Su-min took one last look at Hanuljewel, the smoking chimneys, the green roofs nestled in the valley. Then she turned and followed the angry hunter into the waiting shadows of the pines, toward the mountain that touched the weeping sky. The climb was a silent, angry thing. Jeong moved up the mountain path with the grim focus of a hunter tracking wounded prey. His strides were long and quick, forcing Su-min to push herself to keep up. He did not look back to see if she was following. The only sounds were their boots on the rocky trail, the rustle of the wind through the tall, dark pines, and the distant, low rumble of a waterfall. Su-min did not mind the silence. It gave her time to look at the world she was leaving. She noted the way the light fell through the leaves, painting dappled shadows on the moss. She smelled the clean, damp earth. She listened to the life all around them, a world that did not know about curses or sacrifices. She was storing it all away. After several hours, the path became steeper and more rugged. Jeong finally stopped at a small, clear stream to refill his water skin. Su-min knelt a short distance away to do the same. Why? He asked suddenly, the word sharp as a knife. He still did not look at her. Why what? Su-min replied, watching the cold water flow over her fingers. Why you? Hyen would have gone. Elder Minsu would have gone in a breath if he thought his old bones could make the climb. Even I, he trailed off, shaking his head. You are young. You have skill. The village needs people like you. The village needs to survive, Su-min said softly. It does not need another woodcarver, but it needs mothers and farmers and children who are not sick. If my hands can help with that, then this is what they will do. Jeong finally turned to look at her. His expression was fierce with frustration. This is not like carving a piece of wood. Su-min, this is not a trade. This is throwing your life into a dark hole because of an old story. We do not even know if it will work. We know the curse is real, she said, meeting his gaze. We know people die. The story is all we have. I choose to believe it. He looked away, defeated. I just wish you did not have to be the one to believe it. They continued upward. The air grew thinner and colder. As night began to fall, they made a small camp in a cave sheltered by an overhang. Jeong built a tiny, efficient fire. He handed her a piece of dried meat and a hard biscuit. We will reach the peak by midday tomorrow, he said, his voice quieter now, just above the crackle of the flames. The stone is there. It is an ugly thing, not natural, smooth like water-worn glass, but hard like iron. It stands in a circle of dead ground where nothing grows. Have you touched it? Su-min asked. No one touches it, Jeong said, a superstitious edge returning to his voice. Only those going to meet the curse. It is bad metal. They lapsed into silence again, but it was softer now. The shared fire made it feel less like a march to an end. The next morning, the sky was a wrong color. The usual soft blue was stained a pale, shimmering purple near the horizon where the veil hung. The weeping was getting stronger. The final part of the climb was the hardest. The trees fell away, leaving only bare, wind-scoured rock. The air was biting cold. Just as Jeong had said, they came to a flat area at the very peak. And in the center it stood. The stone was not a stone at all. It was a pillar of a dull, gray metal, twice the height of a person. Its surface was perfectly smooth, reflecting the sickly sky in a distorted way. Around it, for 10 paces in every direction, the ground was black and bare, as if scorched by a long-dead fire. It hummed, a low, deep vibration that Sumin felt in her teeth more than heard. Jiyoung stopped at the edge of the dead circle. His face was pale. This is it. Sumin walked past him into the circle. The humming grew stronger. The air felt thick and electric. She approached the monolith, her heart pounding so hard she felt dizzy. She could see her own wide-eyed reflection in the metal. The old way, she whispered to herself. Draw the sickness to one. Spare the many. A brilliant, painful light suddenly flared along the veil in the sky. It pulsed down, a beam of shimmering energy, connecting the heavens directly to the top of the metal stone. The monolith glowed with a fierce, white-blue light. The hum rose to a piercing whine. Sumin, Jiyoung shouted, but his voice sounded far away. This was the moment. The ritual was clear. She had to touch it. She had to make the connection. Sumin closed her eyes, thinking of Tae's smile, of Hyen's laugh, of the smell of pine in her workshop. She took one last breath of the cold, thin air. Then she placed both of her palms flat against the surface of the stone. That it was not cold. It was burning and freezing all at once. The light from above seemed to bend and funnel into her. She felt a jolt, like lightning traveling up her arms and exploding inside her skull. A torrent of noise, not sound, but pure, chaotic information, flooded into her mind. She saw flashes of impossible things. Cities in the stars, vast libraries of light, schematics of machines that danced before her eyes. It was beautiful and terrifying. It was too much. Her body convulsed. A scream was trapped in her throat. The world dissolved into a storm of color and noise and pain. She felt herself falling, but she never hit the ground. The last thing she heard, from a million miles away, was Jiyoung screaming her name. Then, nothing. The light from the stone faded. The beam from the sky vanished. The veil dimmed to its usual gentle shimmer. The curse had passed over the village of Hanuljeol. The air was still and quiet. Jiyoung ran to the center of the circle. Sumin lay on the blackened earth at the base of the monolith. She was not moving. Her skin was pale, almost gray. He fell to his knees beside her, fingers fumbling for a pulse at her neck. It was there, thready and weak, but it was there. She was alive, but deeply unconscious, lost in a sleep that looked too much like death. Gently, weeping tears of anger and grief he did not fully understand, Jiyoung gathered Sumin into his arms. He lifted her, her head lolling against his shoulder. He turned his back on the dead metal stone and began the long, careful walk down the mountain, carrying the savior of the village, who felt as light and as lifeless as a doll. Jiyoung carried Sumin back to Hanuljeol as if she was made of glass and shadow. The journey down the mountain took twice as long as the climb up. He moved with a slow, deliberate care, avoiding any jostle or bump. She did not stir. Her breathing was shallow, a faint whisper of life against his neck. The village saw them coming from the high path. They did not run out to meet them. They stood in a silent group, watching the hunter return with his still burden, their faces filled with a shared, heavy sorrow. Elder Minsu met them at the edge of the village. He looked at Sumin's pale face, her closed eyes, and his shoulders sank. "The curse took her," he said, his voice rough. "It did," Jiyoung said, his own voice empty. "But her heart still beats. She is not gone. Not yet." He took her to her own small hut. Her friend Hyen was already there, her eyes red-rimmed. She had prepared a bed with soft blankets. Together they laid Sumin down. Hyen, with her healer's hands, checked Sumin's pulse, felt her cool skin, and listened to her breathing. She looked at Jiyoung and shook her head slowly. "Her body is here, but her mind is somewhere far away. This is the deep sleep the elders spoke of." The village began its rituals of mourning for the living. They hung white ribbons of remembrance on the branches of the ancient pine near the central fire. They spoke her name in their prayers of thanks for the passing of the star curse, which had, indeed, left the village untouched. No one fell sick. The sacrifice had worked. But every time they said her name, it was with the tone used for the dead. Jeong came every day. He would sit on a stool by her bed for an hour, saying nothing. He felt a responsibility, a gnawing guilt he could not name. Hyen was the constant caretaker. She would wash Sumin's face with cool water, trickle broth between her parted lips, and talk to her about the village gossip, hoping for any sign of awareness. 3 days passed. Then a fourth morning came, clear and bright. The veil in the sky was faint and harmless. Hyen was grinding herbs by the window when she heard a soft rustle from the bed. She turned. Sumin's eyes were open. They were clear, not cloudy with fever, but they were filled with utter confusion. She stared at the wooden ceiling beams as if she had never seen wood before. Slowly, she turned her head, her gaze taking in the clay walls, the hanging herbs, the sunlight streaming through the window. "Sumin!" Hyen whispered, her heart leaping with wild hope. She rushed to the bedside, taking her friend's hand. "You're awake. Can you hear me? Do you know where you are?" Sumin's eyes focused on Hyen's face. There was a flicker of recognition, but it was buried under a mountain of disorientation. Her lips moved. A dry, cracked sound came out. She tried again. The words that left her mouth were not words. Not any words Hyen knew. They were fluid and complex, full of sharp consonants and rolling vowels that flowed together in a rhythm that was all wrong. It sounded technical, precise, and completely alien. Hyen's hope turned to ice in her chest. "Sumin, it's me. Hyen. You're home. You're safe." Sumin frowned, struggling to sit up. Hyen helped her. Sumin looked at her own hands, turning them over, studying the lines on her palms as if they were a strange map. She spoke again, another stream of that impossible language, her tone now one of questioning alarm. She pointed at the blanket, at the clay cup by the bed, at Hyen's face, and named them all in the forgotten tongue. Tears filled Hyen's eyes. This was worse than the silent sleep. The curse had not taken her mind quietly. It had stolen it and replaced it with something else. A demon's babbling, the villagers would say. The news spread through Hanuljuel like a cold wind. She is awake, but the curse has her tongue. She speaks madness. Her spirit is lost. Elder Minsu came, his face grave. He stood in the doorway and listened as Sumin, seeing the sunlight, spoke a sentence that sounded like a weather report from another world. He made a sign of protection against evil with his fingers. "The star curse lives inside her," he said sadly. "Her body fought, but her soul could not win. She is a vessel for its poison now. We must keep her apart, for the safety of all." Jeong pushed past the elder into the hut. "Let me see her." He stood before Sumin. She looked at him, and for a second he saw the sharp, kind girl he knew. Then confusion clouded her eyes again. She pointed at his leather vest and said a word that sounded like biopolymer laminate degradation. "Sumin," Jeong said, his voice firm. "Fight it. Come back." She cocked her head, not understanding. She replied with more of the fluid, technical speech, her hands moving as if trying to explain a concept. Jeong's fists clenched. It was her, but it wasn't. The sacrifice had been a cruel trick. It had saved their bodies but destroyed her from the inside. He turned and walked out of the hut, a new kind of anger burning in him. Not at her, but at the stone, at the sky, at the whole unfair universe. Sumin was moved to the old empty smokehouse at the edge of the village. It was clean and dry, but it was isolation. People brought food and water, leaving it by the door like an offering to a dangerous spirit. They peeked through the cracks in the wood to see the girl who had saved them, now muttering to herself in a language of ghosts and stars. Inside, Sumin sat on the floor, her mind a roaring collision of two worlds. Images of starships and databases crashed into memories of carving wood and laughing with Hyen. The words, the right words, the precise words for everything she saw were there on her tongue, but they were the words of the builders, the founders, the people from the sky. The simple words for water, friend, and home were trapped behind a wall of shining, terrifying knowledge. She was a prisoner in her own mind, drowning in a sea of information, desperately trying to find the shore of who she used to be. The old smokehouse became a place of whispers and fear. Sumin sat inside its dusty stillness, a prisoner of her own mind. Villagers left bowls of stew and jugs of water by the door, but no one came in. No one except Hyen and Jeong. Hyen came every day. She would enter, set down fresh supplies, and try to talk as if things were normal. She would tell Sumin about whose roof needed mending, or about the new batch of herbs she was drying. Sumin listened, her eyes tracking Hyen's movements with intense focus. She understood the feelings in her friend's voice, the worry, the care, but the meanings of the words themselves were slippery, lost behind a flood of other definitions. When she tried to respond, the strange, fluent tongue would spill out, making Hyen flinch. Each time, Hyen's face would fall a little more. Jeong came in the evenings. He did not try to talk much. For the first few days he just stood there, his arms crossed, watching her. He was not afraid of her. He was angry at the situation. He saw the frustration in her eyes, the trapped intelligence. This was not a mindless beast. This was Sumin, fighting in the dark. One evening, as the sun threw long shadows into the smokehouse, he brought something. It was a simple wooden cup from her own hut. He placed it on the dirt floor in front of her. Then he pointed at it. "Cup," he said slowly, clearly. Sumin looked from his face to the cup. Her brow furrowed. She opened her mouth and a stream of foreign syllables came out. She gestured with her hands, indicating its shape, its material. Jeong shook his head. He tapped the cup again. "Cup." She let out a frustrated breath. She reached out and picked it up, turning it over in her hands. She ran a finger along the rim, feeling the subtle marks left by her own carving knife months before. A memory surfaced, clear and warm. Sitting by her window, shaping this very piece of pine. The feeling was strong, but the word for it was gone. Instead, a different term pushed to the front of her mind. She spoke it aloud. Layered cellulose composite. Hand-formed. Jeong stared at her. He had not understood the words, but he had seen something critical. Her speech was not random babbling. It was specific. It described the object. Hand-formed, he repeated, the only part that sounded somewhat familiar. He mimed carving with a knife. Sumin's eyes lit up. She nodded vigorously. Yes, manual fabrication. Non-powered tool use. He didn't understand fabrication or powered, but manual and tool he could guess. A spark of understanding passed between them. It was small, but it was real. The next day, Jeong returned with a small knife and a block of softwood. He sat across from her and began to whittle, making simple curls of shavings fall to the floor. Sumin watched, mesmerized. The action was deeply familiar. Her hands itched to do it. He finished a rough shape, a little bird, and handed the knife and a new block to her. Her hands remembered. The movements were clumsy at first, as if she was relearning her own body, but then they smoothed out. As she carved, she spoke without looking up, the strange language flowing softly. Jeong listened. He heard the same words several times as she shaped the wings. Aerodynamic profile. When she was done, she held a small, elegant sparrow. She looked at it, then at Jeong, and for the first time since waking, she gave a small, true smile. It was Sumin's smile. Jeong started to bring different things. A rusty nail, a piece of woven cloth, a clay pot with a crack in it. Each time he would say the village word. Each time, she would examine the object with a scientist's intensity and speak her own terms. He began to write them down, scratching the strange sounds onto a piece of smoothed bark with a piece of charcoal. He showed the list to Hyen one afternoon outside the smokehouse. "She is not cursed, Hyen," he said, his voice low and earnest. "She is filled." The stone did not give her madness. It gave her a different way of seeing. A language for how things are made, how they work. Listen. He pointed to the bark. When she saw the rust on the nail, she said this. Ferrous oxide degradation. Ferrous must mean iron. Degradation means breaking down. She was describing the rust not as a stain but as a process. Hyen looked from the charcoal marks to the smokehouse door, hope and fear warring on her face. What does it mean, Jiyoung? It means the curse is not a spirit, he said, conviction growing. It is a thing, like I always said, and it did something to her mind. It did not break it. Overloaded it. With knowledge. Inside, Sumin was having her own breakthrough. She was holding the cracked clay pot. The village word was just out of reach. But the other words were so clear. Ceramic vessel. Thermal stress fracture. Inadequate annealing during original firing. She understood the words. She understood that the pot broke because it was not fired correctly in the kiln. This was not magic. This was cause and effect. This was knowledge. She looked at her hands. Then at the wooden bird she had carved. She had two sets of memories. One set was of this village, of pine trees and cold streams, of laughter and loss. The other set was vast and cool and full of light, images of vast libraries without books, of talking to machines, of a great ship sailing between stars. The paradise lost. A word surfaced from that second set of memories. A word for what had happened to her. Not a curse. Download. The knowledge had been poured into her, a data stream meant for a colony that had forgotten how to receive it. The stone was an interface. The curse was a corrupted signal. And she was now a bridge between two worlds, the simple, living world of Hanul and the forgotten, technical world of its founders. She wasn't speaking a demon's tongue. She was speaking the language of the humans who came from Earth. The knowledge sat inside Sumin like a second heart, beating with a rhythm of facts and history. It was no longer a storm. Now it was a library she was slowly learning to walk through. She could pull a memory to the front of her mind and look at it. The problem was the language. The village words were on the tip of her tongue, buried under the precise, technical terms of the founders. Jiyoung was her key. His visits were no longer just about comfort. They were work. He became a student and a translator, patient and focused. He would point to an object, say the village word, and wait. Sumin would close her eyes, fighting through the avalanche of data to find the simple term. Tree, Jiyoung said, pointing through the smokehouse door at a pine. Sumin frowned, concentrating. Pinus novaris, oxygen-producing biomass. Carbon sink. Tree, Jiyoung repeated firmly. Tree, Sumin echoed, the word feeling strange and soft in her mouth. A small victory. It was slow, painful work. But piece by piece, she was rebuilding her connection to her own world. More importantly, she was teaching Jiyoung about the other one. She used the wooden bird, the clay pot, the rusty nail as her examples. The founders, she said one afternoon, mixing her old tongue with the new. They came in the big ship. Paradise lost. It is still up there. She pointed straight up through the roof. It was sick, broken. Its mind was damaged, like a person with a fever. Jiyoung asked, trying to understand. Yes, a long fever, for generations. The stone on the peak is not a stone. It is a talking point, a place to connect. The weeping sky, the curse, it was the ship trying to talk, trying to fix things. But the message was wrong, broken, like shouting at a baby. It hurt our minds instead of teaching them. Jiyoung absorbed this, his hunter's mind turning over the idea. So it was trying to help? The curse was meant to be a medicine? A teaching? Sumin corrected, searching for the words. A data stream, to tell us how to fix the machines, grow better food, heal sickness. But the stream was corrupted, caused neural mind damage. The wasting sickness. She looked at her hands, the memories clear. The sacrifice at the stone. It was an emergency step. A way for one person to take all the broken data so the village would not get sick. It was never meant to be a curse. It was meant to be a filter. But the filter broke too. Hyen began to join these sessions. At first, she was scared of the strange words. but her healer's curiosity was stronger than her fear. Su-min saw her friend's interest and focused on things Hyen would understand. She took the herbalist's hand and placed it on her own forehead. You felt the fever, the bad heat. Hyen nodded. The data stream causes inflammation in the brain. The thinking flesh. Your medicines, the cool cloths, they help with the inflammation. They are not fighting a spirit. They are treating a physical injury. She picked up a leaf from one of Hyen's baskets. This plant. You use it for pain. Willow bark, Hyen said. Salix alba, Su-min said automatically, then shook her head. Yes, contains salicylic acid, a chemical that reduces inflammation and pain. Your knowledge, Hyen, it is good. It is science. You just have different words for it. Hyen's eyes went wide. To hear her life's work validated by this strange, starborn knowledge broke the last of her fear. She squeezed Su-min's hand. You are still you. I am both, Su-min said quietly. And I need to tell the others. That was the hard part. Elder Min-su and the villagers still saw a cursed woman. The proof had to be undeniable. It had to be useful. The opportunity came with the old water mill. Its central grinding stone had cracked years ago. The village had painstakingly shaped a new one from hard river rock, but they could never get it to sit perfectly on the spindle. It wobbled, making the grinding slow and uneven. For years, they had simply lived with it. Su-min asked Jeong to take her to see it. He was hesitant, worried about the villagers' reaction, but he agreed. Walking through the village in daylight for the first time since her return was a trial. People stopped working to stare. Mothers pulled children inside. Whispers followed her like ghosts. She ignored them. She went to the mill and studied the problem. She saw the uneven spindle, the crude stone bearing. The knowledge in her mind presented solutions. Lubricants, metal sleeves, precise leveling. But they had no metal to spare, no fine tools. Then she saw a pile of smooth, wet river stones used for weighting nets. An idea clicked. She turned to the miller, an old man named Day. She spoke slowly, carefully choosing the village words Jeong had helped her reclaim. The stone is not balanced. The spindle is not straight. You need to lift and support. She mimed with her hands. You need to make a bed of small, round stones, like eggs. The big stone will settle into them. They will roll and find the balance point. It will be level. Day looked at her with suspicion, then at the wobbling millstone. He had nothing to lose. With Jeong's help, they lifted the heavy grinding stone. Following Su-min's gestures, they created a dense, flat bed of the smooth river stones on the wooden platform. Then they lowered the millstone onto it. The stone settled. The small river stones shifted and rolled minutely beneath its weight. Then, everything went still. Jeong gave the great lever a push. The millstone turned. It turned smoothly, silently, without a wobble or a grind, a perfect, even rotation. Day the miller stared, his jaw slack. He touched the running stone with a trembling hand. He looked at Su-min, not with fear now, but with awe. How did you know? Su-min looked at the working mill, then at the faces of the slowly gathering crowd. She spoke, loud enough for all to hear, forcing the simple words out. I didn't know. I remembered. The turning of the millstone changed the village. It did not change it all at once, but it was a start. Where before people saw a cursed woman, some now began to see a woman with strange, useful knowledge. The miller, Day, became her first defender among the elders. He argued with Min-su by the central fire. It was not magic, elder. It was smart thinking. The stones took the wobble away. We have flour that is fine as dust now. How can that be evil? Min-su stroked his beard, troubled. The wolf that leads you to water may still be a wolf, Day. The source of her knowledge is the same as the source of our sickness. It is a dangerous path. But the path was already being walked. People with problems started to come, cautiously, to the edge of the smokehouse. A farmer, Jean, came with a plow whose wooden handle kept splitting. Su-min examined it. She ran her fingers along the grain of the wood. You are forcing it against its nature, she said, her speech a careful mix of old and new words. The grain runs this way. You are bending it that way. It will always break. She showed him how to shave and reposition the handle so the force went with the grain, not against it. He tried it. The plow stopped breaking. A young mother, Unji, came with a worry. Her clay oven would not get hot enough to bake bread properly. Sumin asked to see the fire. She watched how the smoke flowed. The air is not moving, she explained. The fire eats air. You need a path for the air to come in below and a hole for the smoke to leave above. It will pull the heat through. She sketched a simple flue and air intake design in the dirt with a stick. Unji's husband made the changes. That evening, the smell of properly baked bread filled their part of the village. Each small fix was a thread, slowly weaving Sumin back into the fabric of Hanulgioel. But trust was still fragile. It was held together by Jeong's stubborn presence and Hyen's gentle advocacy. Then the river block.it happened after heavy rains in the high mountains. A landslide of mud and boulders crashed down, completely blocking the narrow gorge where the river Sinai flowed into the valley. The Sinai was the lifeblood of Hanulgioel. It turned the mill, watered the fields, and gave them drink. Panic set in. The village well would not last long. The crops would wither. Without the mill, they had no flour. The men, led by Jeong, worked for 2 days with picks and shovels, but the blockage was massive. A huge, moss-covered boulder, bigger than 3 houses, sat squarely in the center of the flow, with tons of earth packed around it. Their tools were useless against it. Elder Minsu called a desperate meeting. We must pray for more rain to come from another direction. We must prepare to abandon the lower fields. Sumin walked into the center of the meeting. She had come without being asked. The crowd fell silent, all eyes on her. She looked thinner, but her gaze was clear and direct. You cannot move the stone with your hands, she said. But you do not need to. You can make the stone move itself. Jeong stepped forward. How? She turned to him. We need leverage. We need to use the mountain's own strength. She began to speak, and the old technical terms mixed with her simple explanations. She talked about pivot points and force multipliers. She described a system of long levers, the tallest, straightest pine trunks they could find, and a fulcrum made of the smaller boulders from the slide. We dig under the big stone here and here, she said, pointing on an imaginary map. We place the levers. We use the strength of many people on the long ends. We do not lift the stone. We tip it. We make it fall downhill, where its own weight will break it and clear the path. Minsu shook his head. It is too big. It is the work of giants, not men. It is the work of physics, Sumin replied, the strange words slipping out. She saw their confusion. It is the work of how the world works. A long pole gives your strength a longer arm to push with. It is a fact, like a seed growing in sunlight. Jeong looked from the desperate faces of the villagers to Sumin's confident eyes. He believed in what she saw. We have the trees. We have the ropes. We have strong backs. I say we try her way. What other choice do we have? A long silence hung in the air. Then Day the miller grunted. The millstone works. I will push on her long pole. One by one, others agreed. It was not full trust. It was the trust of the desperate. For the next day, the entire village worked under Sumin's direction. She was everywhere, not just speaking, but doing. She helped position the massive pine trunks. She showed them how to pile stones to create a solid pivoting point. She tied knots and directed where to dig. She spoke 2 languages, one of simple commands and one of deep understanding, and Jeong was her bridge, translating her intent when her village words failed. Finally, everything was ready. Ropes were tied to the long ends of the 3 great levers wedged under the giant boulder. Every able-bodied person in Hanulgioel took a position on the ropes. Sumin stood to the side. With Minsu and Hyen, she gave the signal. Now, pull together. A unified groan rose from the crowd. The pine trunks bent, creaking terribly. For a long moment, nothing happened. Doubt flashed across every face. Then, with a deep, grinding sound that came from the belly of the mountain. The giant boulder shifted. Tipped, just a finger's width. Then a hand's width. Again. Pull. Jeong roared with a second great heave. The boulder rolled onto its side, crashed into the other debris, and thundered down the gorge, shattering as it went. A trickle of water became a stream, then a rushing river, bursting through the remaining loose earth and flowing freely once more. A cheer erupted, loud and full of relief. People hugged, crying and laughing. They turned, looking for the source of their salvation. They looked at Sumin. She stood by the rushing water, a smile on her face, the starlight knowledge in her eyes, and the mud of her village on her hands. Minsu slowly walked over to her. He did not speak. He simply bowed his head, a deep, respectful bow from elder to savior. It was not the bow for a cursed one. It was the bow for a leader. The dam in their trust had broken, just like the one in the river. The sky began to weep again. A week after the river ran free, the veil shimmered with that familiar, sickly light. The old fear returned in a cold wave. People stopped in the fields looking up. Mothers called their children inside. The memory of fever and silence was too fresh. Elder Minsu found Sumin at the water mill, watching the smooth, perfect turn of the stone. He did not flinch from her now. His face was etched with worry, not superstition. "It comes," he said. "Can your new knowledge stop it? Or must we hide and hope the sacrifice holds?" Sumin looked at the pulsing sky. Inside her, two sets of memories reacted. The village girl felt a twist of ancient dread. The voice of the founders, however, recognized a system cycling back to an error state. The Paradise Lost was trying, and failing, to do its job. "We do not hide," she said. "We go to meet it, but not for sacrifice. For a conversation." She asked for Jeong, Hyen, and Minsu to accompany her. Others offered, but she kept the group small. This was not a task for strength, but for understanding. The walk to the peak was different this time. There was no grim silence. Sumin pointed out plants, explaining their uses with both her village words and the founder's terms. She spoke of the terraforming, how the first humans had shaped Novaris to bear life. "The curse was never meant to be," she said as they climbed. "It is a cry for help, a broken machine calling out for repair for generations. We just didn't know how to listen." When they reached the dead circle, the stone stood as before, a dark metal finger pointing at the shimmering, pulsing sky. The hum was building, that low vibration that shook the bones. Minsu stopped at the edge, instinctive fear holding him. Hyen clutched her medicine bag. Jeong stood close to Sumin, a solid, protective presence. "What do we do?" he asked. "You watch," Sumin said softly. "And you learn." She walked into the circle alone. The air crackled. She did not approach the stone with sacrifice in her heart. She walked to it as a technician approaches a faulty tool. She placed her hands on the cold, humming metal. But this time, she did not just accept. She listened. The chaos was still there, but she was not an empty vessel anymore. She was a filter. She let the data stream flow into her, but she focused her mind, searching for the core command, the root of the signal. In her mind, she saw the great ship, Paradise Lost, its systems caught in a corrupted loop. She saw the emergency medical protocol, designed to heal and teach, scrambled into a weapon. She did not fight the storm. She spoke to it. She used the forgotten tongue. The words were clear and precise, flowing from her lips into the metal, up through the beam of light to the ship itself. She did not shout. She instructed. Diagnostic override. Authorization. Colony steward. End corrupted broadcast. Initiate primary function. Planetary well-being. Execute gentle cycle restoration. The words meant nothing to the three watching, but they felt the change. The pulsing, painful light from the veil softened. The harsh, jagged beam connecting sky to stone became a gentle, glowing column, like a pillar of sunlight seen through mist. Sumin kept her hands on the stone. Her body relaxed. The strain on her face melted away, replaced by a look of profound relief. "It is hearing," she whispered in the village tongue. The light from the sky shifted from poisonous purple to a healing gold. It spilled down the pillar and washed over the mountain peak, over the dead circle, and over Sumin. It did not burn. Felt warm and gentle. Hyen gasped as a patch of old scars on her own hand, from a long-ago burn, seemed to fade before her eyes. The light touched the grass at the edge of the dead circle. Tiny, green shoots pushed through the black earth for the first time in centuries. Then it was over. The pillar of light faded. The veil in the sky did not disappear, but its shimmer became steady, calm, and beautiful. A silent river of stars, not a weeping wound. Sumin took her hands from the stone. She turned to her friends. She was smiling, and there were tears on her cheeks. "It is done," she said. "The curse is broken. The signal is clean. The ship will sleep now and watch. It will only help. The next time the light comes, it will be warm. It will fix small sicknesses. It will help seeds grow. It is a gift again." Minsu stepped into the circle. He walked to where the new green shoots were growing. He knelt and touched them with a trembling hand. He looked up at Sumin, and his old eyes were full of a new understanding. "You did not just save us from the sickness. You gave us back our history. You gave us the truth." They returned to Hanulgol as the sun set. The village saw them coming, saw the peace on their faces. Sumin went straight to the central fire where everyone gathered. She did not need Jeong to speak for her anymore. "The weeping sky has ended," she told them, her voice strong and clear. "The stone is not our enemy. The ship in the sky is not a demon. They are our past. They are tools our ancestors left us that we forgot how to use. I have remembered, and I will teach you." She began the next day. She gathered the children around her. She pointed to a tree. "What is that?" "A tree," they chorused. "Yes," she said, "and it is also Pinus novaris. Both words are true. One is the word of our home. The other is the word of our first home, Earth. They are both our language." She taught them the simple principles: leverage, irrigation, the germ theory of sickness, using both sets of words, the old and the new, woven together. Sumin was no longer the cursed woman, or the strange savior. She was the rememberer. She carved wood with her skilled hands, and she drew schematics of clean water systems in the dirt. She laughed with Hyen in the village tongue, and she sang old songs from Earth that had no words, just melodies that felt like coming home. She had taken the curse to save the village, and in doing so, she had given them a future by finally understanding the past. The forgotten tongue was no longer a curse. It was a key, and she had used it to unlock the sky.